The following program contains shocking challenges to Republicans. If you suffer from blind party loyalty, this show might not be right for you. Check with the Tea Party leader.
This is the Voice of Resistance, show number 400. That's the best I can do. I'm under pressure.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to show 400 of the Voice of Resistance. It's no wonder I feel so tired all the time. We're going to talk about tyrants today and what we can do to rid ourselves of them. Where's President Reagan? I just got an autographed copy of Dragon Slayers from Randall Terry. Look at this. Look. I'm so excited. I'm more excited than when I received my autographed Spider-Man copy from Stan Lee. Stan Lee. Welcome to today's program, friend. This is show number 400. For the Voice of Resistance. I am truly happy, truly thankful, and excited to do it. That's the end of the fanfare. All right. What do President Assad from Syria and Senator John McCain have in common? It could be that they're both hypocritical men who are upholding tyrants, or at least tyranny. Let's assess this. Randall, why would you say that? Well, one portion of the news, we have President Assad finally admitting, by the way, in Syria, that they do have chemical weapons, right? And saying it's going to cost probably $1 billion. There's a nice round number. $1 billion to move them and to destroy them because of the ecological harm that they would possibly prove to planet Earth and to people. And he said, by the way, if the U.S. wants to pick up the tab, we'd be very interested in that. So let's see how President Obama continues to corner himself. But John McCain is just beside himself with rage. Remember him? He ran against Obama in 2008, John McCain. He's beside himself with rage that Putin, the leader of Russia, is offering to stand by their ally, Syria. Okay? There are some troubling aspects to that, I admit. So McCain wrote an op-ed piece, an editorial, in a Russian online paper called Pravda.ru. Pravda.ru. And he said, and I quote, "Putin is not enhancing Russia's global reputation. He is destroying it. He has made her a friend to tyrants and an enemy to the oppressed." Those are pretty strong words. I admit it. So, Mr. McCain, let's look at U.S. policy. How about Saudi Arabia? Huh? Saudi Arabia is one of our, if not our biggest, one of our top 3 biggest oil trading partners. Saudi Arabia is ruled by tyrants. Saudi Arabia doesn't allow its people to vote, doesn't even allow its women to drive. Okay? Saudi Arabia doesn't allow a church to be built. But you are not calling for any harsh measures to be taken against Saudi Arabia. But let's go a step further. Let's look at the Free Syrian Army, Mr. McCain, that you want to arm. At least 10,000 mujahideen, known Islamic terrorists, are fighting, and you want to arm them. There's another 30 to 35,000 hardcore Islamists, as the media calls them, which is basically a man who believes what a terrorist believes, but just hasn't gone around the world committing acts of terror. It's somebody who wants to keep terror at home. Let's get this government in our hands and let's implement Sharia law. And the press has been showing consistently that members of the Free Syrian Army, that stellar revolutionary band, Mr. McCain, that you want to support, that they're murdering Christians, raping Christians, destroying Christian facilities, and yet you still want to arm them. Wait a minute, what was that line he used? Made Russia a friend to tyrants and an enemy to the oppressed. Mr. McCain, is it possible that you're making America a friend to tyrants? Saudi Arabia, Syria, and are you making America an enemy to the oppressed? Are you not hearing the cries of Christians who are suffering under the hand of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and in Syria and basically any place where the sword of Islam takes root and gives us a bouquet of sabers? Mr. McCain, I applaud you for your courage to speak out against Putin's involvement in propping up what is without question a wicked man and a wicked regime in Syria. But I'm embarrassed for your sake that you don't see the grotesque inconsistency as you seek to prop up and to arm people in the Free Syrian Army, Muslim terrorists, Islamists, members of the Muslim Brotherhood, who are committed to acts of tyranny and oppression on a far more grotesque, multi-century level than Putin ever dreamed. Every day in America, over 3,500 babies are torn apart by abortion. Shouldn't all babies, like this living, unborn child, have the right to life? Baby killing will only end when Americans see the truth of what abortion does to innocent children. You can help end this Holocaust by showing the truth of abortion in your area with a Face the Truth tour. Go to facethetruthamerica.com to set up a Face the Truth tour in your area. The babies and their mothers will be eternally grateful. How would you like to be able to reach hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of potential customers with your product or your company or your web-based business? Well, you can do that right here on this show. Every single day, we get phone calls or letters or orders online from states all over the country where people are watching this television show. Right now, we are seen in 45 cities at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night, and then a rerun again at 12:30 midnight. You can reach them using this show at advertising rates that are so inexpensive, it would blow your mind. So, if you're interested, contact us at the phone number that you see on the screen or the email address, and we can talk about how you can grow your business and help support this show. Welcome back to the program, friend. What do Fort Hood and the Washington Navy Yard have in common? It's very simple. In both locations, the shooters knew that they were going to be able to fire at military personnel as well as civilians who worked for the Defense Department at some level. They would be able to fire at those men and women, and that the men and women, though they work for the U.S. military, or even though they are in a uniform, that they would not be able to return fire. That's what they knew. How did we get to this insanity? Thank President Clinton. Randall, would you like me to break into my Clinton voice right now? Because I've always appreciated the way you speak, the candor that you use. Hillary and I love you. We watch your show regularly. President Clinton, in March of 1993, right after he came into office, made military bases gun-free zones, at least certain parts of them. Think of the insanity. I want you to just stop and think of the, I'm going to use a highly charged word here, the demonic insanity of telling men and women in the military that they cannot carry their personal firearms. The rules became so tight that it was almost impossible for a base commander to give permission to military personnel on his base to carry a personal firearm unless they knew that that exact individual's life was being threatened. They're in the military. In other words, thank you, John McCain. Thank you, President Obama. Thank you, President Clinton. You'll do more to arm the Mujahideen, the Free Syrian Army, than you will to arm U.S. military personnel on their own bases. Does this seem sick and insane to anyone besides me? The Washington Times did an editorial in 2009 in which they said that the shooter at Fort Hood in Texas would have received more return fire quicker in a Texas Walmart than on a military base in Texas. The irony of it is it's beyond being able to make jokes about. It really is. Too many people dead. I've quoted it before. I'm going to quote it again. My goal here is to get inside your head so that the politically correct drivel and toxins that have polluted our airwaves and our politicians' mouths for decades, so that you can be, if not anesthetized, or rather inoculated from it, maybe you can be freed from its poison, right? And it's simply this. I quote President Washington: "An armed society is a polite society." Period. If the Fort Hood shooter had gone on to that campus and started discharging his weapon, and 8 or 10 or 20 people simply turned around, dropped to one knee, and started to return fire, he would have been dead very quickly. And a lot of innocent people would be alive today. The same with the Navy shipyard. If the men and the women who have sworn an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, who are in the military and at any point could be deployed somewhere where they may risk their lives for this country, if they had been allowed to carry a personal firearm and he walked into the hall when he was shooting his way into that building, they would have been able to return fire. And most of those 12 people, most of them would be alive right now. So the horrific truth, the glaring truth, is that Clinton's policies and Obama's policies, and by the way, George Bush didn't reverse that policy when he was in office. So let's make this nonpartisan. President Bush could have said, wait, I'm not going to keep firearms out of the hands of my military because they're on an American base. That's crazy. So this policy has actually endangered the innocent, it has cost innocent lives, and it has emboldened murderers. When are we going to wake up and smell the gunpowder? Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books, theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last. James Madison said, "There is no maxim, in my opinion, which is more liable to be misapplied and which therefore needs more elucidation than the current, that the interest of the majority is the political standard of right and wrong." Welcome back to the program, friend. The President of the United States has evidently not done much research on one of these credit cards. Because what President Obama said in a speech he delivered just a couple days ago was that raising the debt ceiling does not increase our debt. Did you catch the news on that speech? The debt ceiling's been raised over 100 times. It doesn't increase our debt. Now, what he said, technically, is sort of true. In other words, any vote that is passed to raise the debt ceiling, that's the ability of the government to borrow money, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to borrow the money. Like when your credit card company raises your limit. Have you ever had your credit card company raise your limit? What'd you do? You said, well, that was nice of them, but I'm not going to spend that money. But darn, that new suit sure looks good. Gosh, I've wanted that boat for so long and I haven't been able to save up for it, but I can make the monthly payment. It won't be so bad. Or that vacation. The truth of the matter is that there have been extensive studies done that show when they raise the limit on this, people spend it. Yeah. So when our American Congress votes, as they surely will, to raise the debt ceiling for over the 100th and something time, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to spend more money, but we will. Now, there's a verse in the Bible that should trouble us. It says, the borrower is slave to the lender. I repeat that. The borrower is slave to the lender. Who do we owe money to? Funny, the largest single holder of U.S. debt, where we borrow money when the debt ceiling is raised, right? We're going to raise the ceiling, and let's just assume that all right, fine, we're going to borrow more money. I mean, raising the debt ceiling didn't make us borrow more money, but since we can borrow more money, I really wanted that. Who is giving us the money? Who's loaning us the money? Who holds our debt? To whom are we enslaved? Well, the number one holder of American debt is communist China. Yeah, China. 25% of America's debt is held by a nation who in recent years has had generals say that we could reach Los Angeles with a nuclear device. We could blow up Los Angeles. Oh, you need us to loan you some money? The borrower is slave to the lender. And what we have right now is an unthinkable, crushing debt that we are putting on our children and on our grandchildren. And there is no way out. At this point, there's no way out. So what could be some of the ramifications of, once again, raising the debt ceiling? Well, there's people right now, this is perhaps the most important one, there's people right now all over the world that are trying to figure out a way to create a new world currency. The number one currency in the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the purchase of oil, all of these things are driven by and based upon the US dollar. All right? At the end of World War II, bankers and powerful politicians met in the Bretton Woods area of New Hampshire, and they said, we are going to go from using the British pound as the world's currency to the American dollar, okay? And they did, because America had a great manufacturing base, Europe was decimated, and they went from using the British pound to the US dollar because of the strength of the US economy and the strength of the nation. Well, right now, our economy is not so strong. Right now, our nation is in a bit of a pickle. Right now, we are insanely in debt. And so there are many rich and powerful people, both in the political and private sectors, that are trying to figure out what's next. We made the shift from the British pound to the American dollar. We can make a shift from the American dollar to the fill in the blank. And when that happens, we are in for a world of hurt. Just like the people in the Confederate States who had those Confederate dollars. And then suddenly they found out they weren't worth so much. We're going to be in big trouble, people. We're enslaving our children, and Obama is the slave master. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. A nation without a conscience is a nation without a soul. A nation without a soul is a nation that cannot live. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back to the program, friend. Again, as we close off this show, this is our 400th episode. If you want to take a look at a whole bunch of really cool shows, go to voiceofresistance.org and maybe even get a free book. If you sign up with our email list, you can get a free book, one of the books that I wrote while I was in jail somewhere. Enjoy yourself. I want to talk with you about principle and policy. Principle and policy. Are they working hand in hand, or are they in conflict with another? Before we started filming today's show, my staff and I were discussing, when was the last time we had an administration that was actually consistent for righteousness, with their policies and with their principles? And I would argue it was probably Ronald Reagan's administration. There were mistakes in the Reagan administration, but when he said, look, this is what we believe about communism, for example, that's our principle. We think communism is evil, all right? There's an evil empire out there. That's our principle. So therefore, our policy is we're going to build a new generation of nuclear weapons. We're going to build a new generation of fighters and bombers. We're going to arm everyone that we can who stands in harm's way of communist insurgency. And literally, during the Reagan administration, the spread of communism stopped. It was brought to a halt. Why? Because principle was wedded with policy. Now let's just back up the clock a few years and look at, say, something as inane as the funding of Planned Parenthood. The principle of the Republican Party, at least many of the members of the Republican Party in the House, in the Senate, and people who've run for the White House, is that groups like Planned Parenthood are bad. They kill more babies than any group in America. They are protecting pedophiles. They are providing birth control and medication to cure STDs to young teenage girls who are trapped in the sex industry. They're helping pimps. It's all online. You can see it. You can go back and look at some of the 400 shows that we've shot and see for yourself. The facts are there. So the principle of these people is Planned Parenthood is bad, and we should not be giving them our tax money. And so what's the corresponding policy? Say when President Bush was in office and the Republican Party for, I believe, 6 years controlled both the House and the Senate. What was the corresponding policy? Zero. Nothing. They told us, hey, we think Planned Parenthood's bad. We've got to defund them. But they didn't have any policy. They didn't have any political initiative that corresponded to their principle. Now, where I come from, we call that hypocrisy. We call that lying. When you tell voters, this is what I stand for, and then you get in office and you don't stand for it, well then, that's just using words and hot-button issues to seduce people, to get their vote, to get their volunteer man-hours, and to get their money. We need righteous government, where righteous principles are wedded to righteous policy. you.